So this book, To Kill a Mockingbird, it's sold well over 30 million copies. It's been translated into 40 different languages. I read recently that the American Library Association and the British Library Association, they both voted this book the #1 book that everyone should read before they die. And they voted that ahead of the Bible. You probably remember it from high school. Grades 9 through 12, there is no book that's used more. Library Journal voted it the best novel of the 20th century. There's just a phenomenal amount of interest in this book and very little written about it. So I vividly remember the first time this book was read to me. I was probably 13 and we were on a family vacation to the beach. My mom was an English teacher and she was reading the book to my brother and sister and I as we leaned forward in the family station wagon. And I immediately connected with it and loved it. It's kind of one of my top 10. I try to read it maybe once a year. But recently, in the last couple of years, I've really started to sense something deeply spiritual about this book. The very theme of the novel, Atticus tells his daughter Scout, he says, you never really know a person until you climb into their skin and walk around in it. The theme of the book is about being a good neighbor, and I think that's something on many levels we've forgotten as people and as Christians. As an English teacher and a writer, I'm deeply aware of how important story is to us. It's how we explain ourselves. It's how we connect with other people. It's how we define our world. Of course, Jesus was cognizant of this. He taught in story and in parable. And interestingly, his stories weren't told in religious language. He used common language that the people could understand. When I think of a parable, I always think of my dad. He purchased a grandfather clock, and I remember it being rolled into our foyer when I was 12 years old. And that grandfather clock was there and went completely unnoticed by me for years and years until I went away to college and I came home for my first fall break. And I swear to you, that night, that was all I could hear, is that grandfather clock sounding off each hour. I think we become so accustomed to religious language that we're almost desensitized by it. And what I kind of do with To Kill a Mockingbird, I take characters and the important themes of the novel and I've shaped them into parables because they're written in our own language, and I think it kind of wakes us up to the spiritual truths that sometimes we miss. So these parables, they are a blend of the characters and themes and stories of To Kill a Mockingbird, of my personal experience, my faith community experience, and then the biblical narrative. And they all come together in a real conversational type of way. We look at the character Atticus throughout the novel as he demonstrates courage in all these different situations, and we ask ourselves, what is true courage? What does that really mean? What does that really look like? The parable of Scout Finch. Scout's a little 6-year-old girl that faces some pretty oppressive gender expectations, and we look at those scenes in the novel, but then we look at the biblical narrative and this huge role that women have played in the story of God, and we ask ourselves the question, what is the role of women in faith? One of my favorites, Miss Maudie, the parable of Miss Maudie, is about a character who loves to be outside working in nature and gardening. And as we look at her role throughout the novel, we ask the question, what is our role and our responsibility to creation? Ultimately, you don't have to have read To Kill a Mockingbird to totally get these parables, to understand what I'm saying in these stories. And each of them kind of stands alone by itself. It's my hope that after reading the Mockingbird Parables, you would want to go pick up a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. But it's also my hope that I can communicate these deep spiritual themes that have really changed my walk and help me understand what it really means to be a good neighbor.